Hi, everyone. Welcome to episode 29 of Takeaways. My name is Patrick Searcy. I'm Director of Marketing for ALN Apartment Data, and I'm joined by the actual star of the show here, Senior Market Analyst Jordan Brooks. Jordan, how are you today?
I'm great, Patrick. How are you?
Doing well. We got to see each other in person finally recently at our company Christmas party in Richardson, Texas. And unfortunately, I didn't get to spend as much time with you as I would have liked, but it was wonderful seeing you.
It was great. It's been a long time, and I'm sure it was everything that we'd hoped it would be. So
I'm sure it sure was. Well, we're talking about the article from the December newsletter, and it's called National Occupancy Returns to Pre-Pandemic Level. So, the old Ernest Hemingway line gradually then suddenly came to mind when I was looking at the national occupancy chart that's in the article. Is the current trajectory something that we can expect to continue?
I think in the near term, probably yes. If you look at that chart that was in the newsletter, really it's been since the end of summer that we've seen the 40, 50 basis point drops each month in national average occupancy. That's really come as the new construction pipeline has continued delivering units while net absorption has slipped into negative territory at the national level. Generally, we don't see apartment demand bounces in the winter months. This is a seasonal industry, and generally the winter's kind of a softer portion of the calendar. So given that, and given that we're going to continue to see deliveries coming online in the coming months, I don't think there's a whole lot of reason to expect a turnaround, at least in the short term. Again, the December data, January, February data. Once we get to spring, it's going to be interesting because we're going to be sort of in a different environment than we've been in as an industry in the post-COVID world. And we don't really have time to get into all of those details here, but I may have given myself a blog post idea. But to your question, I do think that we'll continue to see occupancies trending down over the next 2, 3, 4 months at least.
Well, you usually talk about price class in your articles here, but that wasn't an angle that was covered in this article. Has there been any interesting developments there on average occupancy front?
I do like to usually include some form of that just to add some context and perspective to these numbers, but in this case we didn't quite have room to fit everything in. But yes, there were some interesting sort of details in the price class data, one of which being, if you look over the last 12 months, Class C and Class D, when grouped nationally, have had negative net absorption over the last 12 months. But if you look at just the last 3 months, almost all of the losses in the Class C space specifically have come over the last 3 months, really, since the end of summer. And so that was an interesting thing in the data, is that we've really seen a trajectory change in general, I would say, over the last 3 months, but that was especially pronounced in Class C specifically. And then also, if you look at the Class B absorption numbers, again, over the last 3 months, barely in positive territory, by, if I remember correctly, by like less than 300 units nationally. So I would anticipate once we get the December data in, and then certainly the January data, that it looks like we're going to see Class B slipping into negative net absorption territory over the last handful of months.
Something that you typically do put into your articles is mentioning some specific markets, and you did highlight some in this article. Did anything really stand out to you in the market level data from sort of an aggregate perspective?
Again, I separated a lot of the data out, looking at the annual numbers, looking at the monthly numbers, but the 3-month numbers really just stood out kind of broadly. Again, that sort of post-summer seems to have been kind of an inflection point in 2022 performance for our industry. And if you look at the primary markets in particular that have seen the most substantial downward movements in average occupancy over the last few months, in general, they were sort of the high growth markets of the last few years that in some cases had ramped up the construction activity. And now those new units are coming in to a market that's very different from late 2020 or certainly 2021. And so whether we're talking about more like markets like Charlotte, Orlando, Tampa, Denver, a couple of others in that vein, Columbus, Ohio is one. We've seen sort of an uptick in deliveries matched with the slumping demand that we've seen across the country. And so those two things combine to sort of really hit those markets particularly hard.
Well, here we are closing in on the end of 2022. That's kind of difficult to say and think here, but we always talk about what you have coming up next. I know you've got a couple of things at least starting next month. What's on your radar for things that you'll be doing, and what's on your radar for the blog?
Yeah, so the end of the year travel slowdown is coming to a close. And so, I've got a couple of events in January. So the Shreveport Apartment Association, I'll be there January 10th, doing sort of a market update outlook presentation. So for viewers of this that may be in those surrounding markets, definitely check that out either on our social media or on the association website. And then January 24th, Greater Charlotte Apartment Association, same thing. I'll be there at their annual conference, and we'll be kind of looking at North Carolina multifamily versus other parts of the country and kind of digging into the data relevant to that region. And then on the blog, as I said, our discussion topic earlier, I think on your first question, I think that may be something I dig into on the blog here shortly. And then, of course, in a couple of weeks, we're going to have the 2022 annual numbers in. And so a lot of the blog content will be focused on kind of digging into, okay, what now happened in the 2020 to 2022 period, now that we've kind of been through this roller coaster up and down of the post-COVID world.
Well, you can keep an eye on our social media for more information on what Jordan's up to and what we're posting as our original content. You can follow us on Twitter at ALN APT Data, or search for ALN Apartment Data on Facebook and on LinkedIn. And now you can also find us on Instagram and search for ALN Apartment Data on Instagram. We're going to be posting some exclusive content that's just going to only be there. So make sure you check us out there and follow us, and make sure like and subscribe this YouTube video so that you're always notified of our newest content here on YouTube. Jordan, it was wonderful seeing you in person recently. It's great talking with you here, and I look forward to chatting with you again next month.
See you in the new year, Patrick. Thanks.
Bye.